Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LivingYosh. There are people who are funny around their friends. There are people who are funny at the Shabbos table. Then there are people who have the courage to walk onto a stage, stand in front of a room full of strangers, and say, "Okay, now laugh." My guest today actually made a career of it. Eli is a Jewish comedian who has built his comedy around everyday life, Jewish culture, and things so many of us experience but don't necessarily know how to laugh about. But I think comedy becomes even more interesting when life isn't funny, especially since October 7th. The Jews have experienced tremendous pain, fear, and anti Semitism, and yet somehow we'll still need to find moments to laugh. So today, I want to know about the person behind the jokes. When did Ellie realize he wasn't just a funny guy in the room, that he actually had a gift? Ellie, welcome to Living Yosh, and thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to. I have a lot of good questions, but like I said,
Right.
we don't need to go through all of them. But I think some of my favorite interviews are comedians because you could have a really good time with it.
Yeah, and I would also say, based on your intro, I would say that there is something to be said about the person that makes you laugh at the Shabbos meal. I think if that person can make you laugh at the Shabbos meal, I think they often have what it takes to go on stage.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough crowd at the Shabbos meal, especially if you have like a big kiddish or like family over, because it can get pretty bad sometimes. There's no humor.
Well, right, you have to be in the right setting. Certain Shabbos meals are irredeemable, and they have no. You're just like, all right, I'm gonna. When is dessert? When is benching? And that, but yeah, I hear you.
So I want to know, and we'll. I usually start like this. I want to know who the Ellie was growing up, compared to obviously the funny guy now. Were you the center of attention? Were you the shy guy? Were you a troublemaker in school? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I think not the center of attention type of thing, but I think you'll find, and I think this is true by a lot of comedians, is that a lot of comedians do comedy now because they didn't get a ton of attention or
Yeah.
validation as a kid. So that's not always the case, but that's the case a lot of times. Because what else would possess you to be like, "Hey, strangers, listen to me"? It's a little bit. It may be from the nature of like trying to get your family's attention and not succeeding in it. There's like a show, not that I'm this way, but there's a show called Long Story Short, which is like a from the guy who made BoJack Horseman. It's like a cartoon. They had the first season, and it's like about a Jewish family, and like they show like the origins of like the mother, and like they show like the opening has like her as a kid, and she's like trying to talk about how she did this thing as a kid, and nobody's listening to her. No one's listening, and then eventually she like hurts her knee, and then she starts screaming in pain, and then everyone comes, and she's like, it feeds that thing. Not that that's me, but I'm thinking like that's some of where it comes from. For myself growing up, I mean, I had a sense of humor. I very much pride myself on my sense of humor. I feel like was developed by The Simpsons and Seinfeld, the show. I also watched Seinfeld the stand up, but Seinfeld the show and The Simpsons really, like, in Chicago where I grew up, it was on at 5:30, 6 o'clock, like we're like back to back
I
on
know.
Fox.
I used to
So
be
like,
a Seder to go.
yeah, that was just like that's what we watched, and like Home Improvement was 4:30, and all these shows. So there are certain shows that I like resonated with. Simpsons and Seinfeld were like something that we like, really watched a bunch, and I think both of those shows. I mean, Seinfeld has like a studio audience, but The Simpsons for a cartoon is a show that doesn't have a laugh track, which it's a cartoon, so of course it doesn't. But like, I think that really um, differentiates sense of humor styles because you have to know a joke has been said, or you have to know what's funny without an assist. I mean, yes, there is like setup and punch and the situations and things, and when Homer says something, that's a thing. But I think that's a really important thing, especially like I'll the two shows I'll compare to like in more recent time is like Big Bang Theory and Modern Family. Big Bang Theory,
Bang Theory.
not my style, so I'm not going to trash it completely. But Big Bang Theory is very much like ba 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 ha 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 Sheldon. and then a joke, and then laugh track type of thing. And then as opposed to, I would say, Modern Family is just like joke, joke, line, 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 line. If you miss the jokes, we're not stopping for you. And I think that's uh, the way my sense of humor is developed. I think it's a lot more subtle and nuanced in a lot of ways than just like beat you over the head. I would even say like not like I don't say slapsticky, but not like, okay, here's a joke that was said. You just have to know if they were. But in terms of growing up, though, like I wasn't the class clown, but like in my elementary school, RE Crown Hebrew Day School, like I think it's still in one point in eighth grade or something, or eighth grade, we had like time to like make like a Friday afternoon, like Friday morning, like sketch called it Friday Morning Live, you know. And like we would just do sketches, and we got time to leave class to do this, which was amazing. I don't really know how that happened.
But yeah,
Yeah, so no, whatever. It was within reason because we were going to do like a showcase, and maybe they just realized, hey, this is the way to get some of the kids entertained and stuff like that. If you like, I think Jim Carrey says something like, I think him having a teacher growing up was like, okay, you have five. If you like listen and do your stuff, you get 5 minutes at the end to like entertain everybody. So, you know, uh, but yeah, so I wasn't like the class clown like type of thing. I mean, there were times I got kicked out and stuff like that, but my school was on the stricter side for certain things. And then high
Well,
school.
so if you like The Simpsons, you're more into, I don't know if this is the right title for it, but more stupid humor, and like Big Bang is more like smart humor.
That's what they want you to think.
Oh, okay, okay.
Meaning, I think that's what I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Please,
I
please
think
educate
I
me
think The Simpsons is smart humor, and Big Bang Theory is what they think smart people, what you think smart
then.
humor is. And it's a misdirect because it's supposed to be about smart people as opposed to The Simpsons, which is supposed to be about dumb people, but it's written
Yeah.
by smart people.
So-
So I'm saying The Simpsons writers are Harvard
oh
graduates and
no,
stuff like that.
the smart
And
concepts, but it's kind of like, oh, like something like silly, like more than that. Like you don't have to be educated to
I,
understand it, I guess.
I think you're saying that because it's a cartoon. I think
I
you're
mean,
saying
there's
that because it's a
smart
cartoon.
cartoons out there.
What?
I can't think of one on top of my head. Maybe as we go on, but there's some smart cartoons where like it's like more
No,
jokes.
I'm not. No, no, no. I'm saying there are smart. I think cartoons are smart. I think we have this uh, little bit childlike lens of looking at TV shows, and if something's animated, and not anymore. I don't think. I think the modern Netflix and TV streaming has kind of changed that approach. But there was this idea of like if it's a cartoon, it's dumbed down. It's for kids
That
and
makes
stuff like
sense.
that. Meaning, so South Park, for example, South
I was
Park,
just
which
gonna
again,
ask you about South Park. What
South Park,
category?
I never really got into fully,
Me too.
but I know that South Park has this like I wouldn't say Pixar level, like, hey, this is really for both layers of kids and adults or whatever. But South Park is smarter. You just have to know the subtlety. Like Al Gore dressing up as like Man Bear Pig or talk about Man Bear Pig being a like metaphor for global warming back in the day is a really smart thing. But you have to know that that's the metaphor. And that's not necessarily the
Okay, I
case
like
anymore.
this. So where would you put Ren and Stimpy? What category is that?
Ren and Stimpy, I was too young to appreciate because I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
this is gross," but it's probably smarter than I realized. But like, Rocco's Modern Life, for
Wow.
example,
Okay, so what that's not that
seems
Simpsons is smarter than Rocko's Modern Life as far as like.
no Rocco's Modern Life though, because it's for on Nickelodeon for kids. Your perception of it is like this is not intelligent. However,
Now I have
it
a whole new
is.
mindset of I don't even know anymore. Now you confused me. I mean,
I'm telling you. Meaning, we like to think, okay, because it's infantile. I mean, I think that's also very true of like I think when it comes to movies now for a lot of animated movies now, I don't think hold up in terms of like level of caliber as opposed to like Pixar movies, for example. Pixar movies have this amazing layer of being for kids and adults where you think yes, it's a movie for kids, marketed toward kids, but really there's another whole layer that's for our age group, or
You would have been great. I just interviewed Saul Blickoff, the you know who he is?
uh,
And
yeah,
he could explain every cartoon in like such a wise way. Like we spoke about Lion King probably for a half hour and how
yeah.
deep it is.
Lion King is Hamlet. Sword of the Stone is that medrash about Moshe Rabbeinu with going to Midian and pulling the staff out of the thing.
Oh my god.
Hercules is Superman and Shimshon, and you know all these things for sure. I'm just saying we because of the audience. We there is a sense of it, but I think nowadays, yeah, it's really lost its charm. Like, for example, I would say the Mario movies, right? The new Mario cartoon movies. I went to see this with, so I went to see the first one with my kids, and I was like, oh, great, they made a Mario movie.
Mhm.
Surely they'll throw in plenty of fan service for me, who is going to this with my
For
kids
sure.
because Mario is my age demographic. But like they did not like it was a very simplistic type of thing, and there weren't like layered jokes the way that like Pixar, or Shrek or stuff like that
Yeah.
does, where like I went to I went to see Toy Story 5, which I highly recommend for adults for sure. But
Yeah.
I went to see Toy Story 5 the day before I was working at a camp this summer, and it was helpful because Toy Story 5, I thought it was just going to be like another cash grab, like a lot of these sequels are. But
Yeah.
Toy Story 5, it was very much about how kids don't play anymore, they don't use their imagination anymore, they just are on screens. And I went to see it with my kids and like my friends and their kids, and I was sitting next to my friend's 7-year-old kid, and he's sitting there like 40 minutes into the movie, and he says, "This is the most boringest thing ever." And I almost turned to him and I said, "This isn't for you," like, and I meant it because it is. There's a whole layer that is not for like kids, but I think we have this sense of cartoons being like, oh, silly. Like Animaniacs is a good example, right?
Oh, I love
Animaniacs,
Animaniacs.
right? Animaniacs is a cartoon, a very, very smart cartoon that,
Wait,
first
can
of
you go
all,
back to Toy Story for 1 second? I know we
sure,
start. So the one thing that was hard for me, because which I do agree, it is a little more adult in some aspect, is that I'm almost like tearing up because it's making me think of how electronics took over my kids' brains, and I'm like hoping they're gonna say, Dad, I'm gonna go home and play with my toys. That was the hardest part for me. Like it's emotional for me, but I'm like, guys, your toys are waiting. No, I'll go play on my iPad.
well, yeah, well, there's no easy way to kick a habit. I think it was just again, I think it was more for parents to be like, hey, be careful with how much screen time you're giving your kids, or unfiltered access and all that. I also, I saw Inside Out in theaters about like what's going on in like a
Yeah.
little girl's like head, or like different things. And after, as while walking out the theater, this like little girl is like having like a tantrum, and I'm like, oh my god, this is about her. Like this is right. This is what happening. We're seeing anger right now. So, yeah, but I would say so. Animaniacs is a perfect example of like a show that like it seems so stupid. If you look at it with a very broad, superficial brush, you're like, this is so stupid. But any child of the 80s and 90s is like, no, that show is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I love Animaniacs. And
Yeah, and I
Looney
think very.
Tunes. Yeah, it was the best.
Right. So like very smart type of thing. So I think nowadays, unfortunately, the quality of writing and things like that is just on this, it's all about let's just get people to see it, in the theater.
Yeah.
They don't even make quality. They don't even make as good quality in a lot of ways. So certain exceptions exist, but I think it's all about like, hey, let's just make another movie to get people another sequel, no risk. Like I mean, I hope Shrek 17 will be good, but
Yeah, me
you have
too. I don't know. Well, I guess that's why they're making a lot of live movies. Like it's coming to life.
right. And again, that's just like no risk because they're gonna be, it's a good story and people are gonna see it just because they know the story, which is familiar and helpful. I think there's a very big fear nowadays and concern about being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
People are very not okay with being uncomfortable. Whether that's take that to any extreme you want. Nobody wants to be bored. Nobody wants to be kids and adults. You can't be bored anymore. You can't be out of your comfort zone. You can't have a conversation with somebody you disagree with. because then you're going to get to politics, and then you're going to get yelled about Trump or not Trump, and like all that stuff, and then you're just going to get in the and then it's going to devolve,
That is
and
right, by the way. Even with my kids, like I'm like, it's okay to be bored, but they're like looking at me like, wait, what? Like it is? Like
well,
how dare you tell me I can't use my electronics? What am I gonna do with myself?
right. Which I think Orthodox Jews luckily have the Shabbos thing, and that helps because my kid on a Sunday morning is like, "Where's the remote? I need to watch TV at seven
Seriously.
thirty or whatever." And I say, "Okay, but if this was Shabbos, you'd be like, all right, I'll figure something else to do."
But it's not Shabbos, Dad. It's not.
Right, right. So I think we have to be a little more okay being uncomfortable. I think um, if you don't get uncomfortable, then you can't grow, which easy for me to say, but it's true. You can't if you argue with if you're and then this is the danger of the algorithms and AI and stuff like that of feeding what you like. Here's more stuff 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 you like. Here's confirmation bias of your opinions about Israel, about America, about everything, about your politics. Here's more stuff you like that you agree with, and you just yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
Facebook
yes.
knows what I'm thinking even when I'm not thinking about it. I'm like, wait, how did you like I'm sure I was gonna think about that, but you popped it up on my screen. Like it's unreal.
I used to my wife's my father-in-law used to work at Google, and I said one time I went to a tour there, and I said that I was creepy because I went to the bathroom and I peed, and a voice said, "You have too much iron" or something like that. But that was the but yeah, that was the prelude to
You're talking to me?
algorithm,
Like who said that?
algorithms exactly. But yeah. So wait, back we went a long digression to think, but I think in terms of myself growing up, like in elementary school, I was I was always like the guy who like commented on stuff. Like again, I think like the Shabbos table guy who was like, hey, you can make a quick joke based on something that happens, or like a commentary type of thing. I mean, I think remember. Do you remember the show Celebrity Deathmatch?
Of course, yeah, on
I
MTV.
remember having doodles of like different teachers. I would do this teacher versus this teacher and stuff like that. Like make my own stuff like that. I wish
That's
I
awesome.
wish I was better with my like own like
That's such a good idea. Oh my god.
archives. But I would just be like, oh, I probably wrote like jokes of like what they would say and stuff like that. And and then I went to in high school. I didn't do comedy then. I I went my year in Israel. I went to Israel for the year after high school to
Where did you
yeshiva, and
go?
what?
What school did you go to?
I went to Shalavim for
Okay.
1 year, which is like negative years. But no, it's like a 2 year program, and I say anybody who went to 1 year at Shalavim is like the
I
best.
ended up in Neve, so I can't say anything. It wasn't by
But
choice, but
yes, Neve going when the when Shalavim guys went to Neve, that was like it was like crossing the other side of like. Oh, we are in the sketchy part
yeah,
of whatever the neighborhood. You
yeah.
know,
It was even shocking for me the first day I walked in from because I unfortunately got kicked out of my other school and once you have that on your resume, no one takes you. So
yeah, yeah. So I hear you. So my year in Israel, I was at a meal at someone's house. The guy who like made Aliyah when we were in second grade, and then through somehow we like found the guy. Me and a couple other friends who went to went to school together, and we're like, oh, he's totally gonna remember us. He did not really remember us, but we went to his house for Shabbos, and it wasn't like the most awkward Shabbos, but like that Friday, there was like a Friday night meal that like like British couple was there, and I was just like kind of like entertaining them, and they were like, "Oh, you should do comedy," and like it was my year in Israel, so like I didn't even think of it as a thing. I also didn't go to school in Yerushalayim, so like if I was in school in Yerushalayim, there would have been I think there was like David Kalumnik did like a comedy club in Yerushalayim at that point. So I wish I would have known about it, and it was like 2007, 2008 was a different time. Was basically. So then that was when it was like I guess the first kernel of the idea, and then when I was in YU, I started a joke newspaper like the Onion, but
wait, so
with
I think you just answered one of my questions I really wanted to ask. So when you're sitting at that table with the British people, was that the first time someone complimented your comedy? You're just like, this is something that I should consider.
No, I don't think so. I mean, to be fair, I guess my senior yearbook said in high school said like, what's everyone going to do in 10 years? And mine said stand-up comedian.
Oh, wow,
So,
that's a compliment.
which
You
was like, hey, I get it, which is great. So,
wow.
yeah, I didn't even realize that for a while. Yeah, so that was interesting. And then, yeah, so that was like, didn't that wasn't the first time that that happened, but like I didn't I guess have the means to do it slash like like how do you it's like starting anything like you said with your podcast, like how do you start something? So
I don't even
um
know.
yeah, and then no, so when I was in YU, my friends of mine were like doing like a fundraiser for like Camp Hask, and they were like doing like a talent show, like a new talent like comedy night. So that was like the first time, and like my friend was involved in it, and like I submitted like jokes for it, and then I like
That's
you know
good.
that was the first time I ever did it. Was like November 2008. So we're coming on almost technically almost 18 years since the first time I ever did it.
Okay, so can you tell me about that first time that you just wrote jokes? You went up and you performed,
No, I wrote a whole thing and then I went up on
and
stage.
how? Tell me you're feeling like you're nervous. I really am interested. In, like how?
So you're super nervous. You're super nervous up front. You're super nervous. I mean, that's people's number one question is like, aren't you nervous? And
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
but like, if you can get over that public speaking element, then you can kind of power through because like at the end ultimately you have to tell yourself what's the worst that can happen, right? And you really have to like get rid of your scary imagination of like, oh my god, they're gonna like everyone's gonna laugh at me, I'm gonna get embarrassed and whatever. Especially these days in a news cycle where your news cycle is like everything is like, oh, that happened like what 2 3 weeks ago, no, that was 2 days ago, like just like stuff that how quickly information and news stories are just gone. So the same thing with like your social life, like, and maybe it's different for like high school and teenagers, but I think at the end of the day, like even if you made a big fool of yourself, that's not going to be in the press that long, it might be, but
So
whatever. So you ultimately,
were you happy with your first performance? I mean, what was your overall
oh
10? I guess.
oh, I didn't. Meaning there was a contest. It was like they had like prizes for the first three people. One of the people who did it was Alex Edelman, who's a very good comedian in his own right. He, I think, won the whole thing. And I didn't, but nobody, you're often not very good your first time, or you're at least, maybe you're passable. I would say the second time I did it really was more, there was like a fundraiser for like Stay Road in Israel, like a town that's like on like the Gaza border that gets like rocketed a bunch. And they did like a fundraiser at like Stand Up New York on the Upper West Side of New York. I thought it was going to be an all Jewish crowd, but it was like a mixed crowd of everybody. Believe they're called non-Jews or people. Uh, and, uh,
Yeah.
and then I was like the last person to go, and I got up there, and like my friend was like telling me, he's like, "Oh, there's this woman in the front row who's like not smiling. You should call her out." Which it's funny because I don't really do crowd work, so I don't know why the first time, so like second time on stage, I did that. I pointed to her and I was like, "Oh, I'm sure." Like I'm another Jewish comedian. I'm sure you're so sick of our sick of hearing from us. And then I asked this woman, I was like, "Where are you from?" And she said Germany. I'm like, "Oh, all right then." And
Well,
like that was the perfect thing she could have said. That was the best answer she could have said. And like, I just have this like honest response, and everybody cracked up because I said that line right before it. And I was like, this is my low level art scroll, divine intervention of like, God put Eliyahu Navi in the form of this woman, the German woman in there just to give me, because if that didn't go well, I'm probably not continuing doing it, you
well,
know?
Ellie, let me ask you because I actually had a comedian on last week, and I'm really interested in what one comedian says compared to the next, and maybe it'll be different with a Jewish comedian. But what is the no go? Like, what can you not speak about nowadays that you're just like that's off limits? No matter what, I'm going to stay away from it.
I, I think it's not, I think it's just a matter of like your audience reception.
Okay.
right? So I have my own internal, hey, I can make jokes about this or whatever. Like it's also like, what's your barrier? What are you trying to do? Like I would say like Ari Shafir, for example, right, is a very successful Jewish comedian who seems like he really doesn't like Judaism, and I liked his special called Jew like many years ago, but I don't know if it's held up as well in terms of like given the world these days where it doesn't make us look so great. So I think not. I wouldn't say no joke is off limits, but I think it has to be worth the level of humor. Also, like what your persona is, meaning like Anthony Jeselnik is a good example of somebody who is super dark material, like one-liner dark jokes, but you can tell he doesn't mean them. Like he is just like, this is the I'm trying to give you the funniest or most misdirect I can give you. And that's it. There's not there it's like I'm back in the day they had the Friars Club roasts, right? You had Don Rickles
Yeah.
who was like the very insult type of thing. He would like make fun of everybody. But you can just tell the way he did it, and he like was friends with the people, that like it's coming from a place of like, we have this history and I'm gonna rip on you like it's a road, like you're like an
But
ufruf, like it's
isn't
your
that what comedy is all about? You go to a stand-up show. This is my impression. When I go, I feel like everything goes. Like I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but comedians are allowed to be racist. They're allowed to be anti-Semitic because it's all humor. Like they're just having fun with things, so you could kind of forget about what's going on and just get a good laugh. Like, isn't that the point?
right. But hold on, are you? But if that's coming from a point of, it's not racist for the racist sake necessarily. If you
Oh no, yeah, yeah.
but I think that's a really big distinction, because some people are just like, this is just a character up there and this is a joke, as opposed to like deep down, like Theo Vaughn is a good example, right? He's a podcast comedian, he's a comedian and a big podcaster, and it's like you're like, oh, I don't know if he has this like dumb persona, but he really believes that these things about Jews, or it seems like it, and I get it on the podcast space, it's different than on stage, but like if you're saying stuff on stage and you're just like perpetuating like stereotypes, and there isn't like, again, Mark Norman is a perfect example. He's just all about the jokes and like, this is funny, and you can tell he doesn't mean it. And that's a really big distinction of like, do you mean it or do you not mean it? And so I think that really matters, because it's like, can you, yeah, you can be racist, but like, why is it, I'm sure certain jokes like about like, if you make a joke about black people, it probably won't go as well, but if you make jokes about Jews, it's totally fine. Like that's a problem in that's a problem, and as a double
It goes
standard.
though. There's no way around that.
Why
I don't know. Like
why is there a way around that? That wasn't always the case.
that wasn't always, but now, like you could, some people could say whatever they want, and some people can't say anything. Even on social media, like people can make comments about certain people, but if that certain person makes a comment back, it's like, what is wrong with you? How can you say
and,
that? And I'm
and
like,
I think I think it I think it And I think a comedian's job is to call out the BS of society in
I
a lot of
agree.
ways.
I
I mean,
agree.
it's not exactly that, but like through humor, call
Yeah,
out the BS of society. And I think that's the fact that you can say whatever you want as this person, but not as another person. I don't think that, like, like the Pope, this Pope who used to, he's from Chicago, and every time he says something about like Israel is terrible and Gaza, whatever, and I say classic White Sox fan. And I'm so sorry if you're any White Sox fan listeners, but and then I literally say, like, he says this yesterday, he like posted something about like, oh yeah, I want to just say whatever is happening in the West Bank is terrible and we need a two-state solution. And I'm like, return the menorah first
right.
to the Jews, and we'll talk. Like, you don't get to be this. So that's the thing. I think there's like a different levels of moral superiority. Like where, hey, you get to do this as this person, you get to do this as this person. I'm not saying like a punching down, punching up type of thing, but yeah, you can say whatever you want about Jews to minimal consequence. Or okay, yeah, you'll get dragged by like anti-Semitism groups who like are like, what is this, whatever. And it's not, but it's not like this level of like I say about Israel, for example, right? Israel, you know that Israel is a democracy for the most part, because you can say whatever you want about Israel without real negative consequence. Like, you're not going to be like, just, hey, this guy says something about Israel. Yes, you said I love, like I love terrorists and stuff like that. That's a very different thing than like Israel is the worst country in the world and stuff like that.
Yeah.
but meaning one is going to like be like, hey, we're gonna knock on your door, but like, but that's the proof of Israel being one of the fairest countries, because if it wasn't China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, there's a reason there's no negativity out there about those countries, really.
But there is a lot of China jokes.
There are a lot of there, but there aren't a lot of China government jokes.
That's right. Yes. Oh, God forbid.
Does that tell you something? The fact that you can't say whatever you want about the Chinese government, or you can't say anything what you want about Iran, you can't say whatever you want about Hamas in Gaza, the fact that you can't say whatever you want within those places, the fact that you're not hearing from those people,
Yeah.
that tells you more, and that's the reading between the lines that we don't do anymore. Critical thinking, where you're watching an Animaniacs and you're like, "Hey, this is a lot smarter than I realized," or like whatever. There's a lot of subtlety that I think, but I'm saying as a comedian, like, yes, your job on stage is to tell jokes, and be funny. That is your ultimate thing. The audience will tell you, okay, if you went too far, if you said something super racist and it wasn't funny enough to like, there has to be like, this has to be worth the, almost like there's this like an idea of like, if you're telling a story, right, telling a long story, the longer the story, the bigger the payoff better be. If you're telling me I need to hold on attention for 5 minutes, this better be a huge laugh, because you're taking me on this road. So the same thing, if you're going to be this far offensive, it needs to be at least as funny in that realm. And I think there's also just like a lazy comedy out there, because I think there's lazy everything out there. That there's just no. And I'm not saying it across the board, but I'm saying there's a lot of laziness of like, Trump jokes are. You're allowed to make a Trump joke. I don't care, but like make it clever. John Mulaney's horse in the hospital bit is one of the best Trump bits out there. It was early on in like 2016, 2017, or something like that, maybe later. But it's like doesn't say the word Trump once, and it doesn't say Obama once, and it just doesn't. It's very clever. It's like the Seinfeld, the contest episode, where it like doesn't talk about the actual thing. It's all layered and nuanced. So like there's just a lot of unintelligent humor out there that
Yeah.
I think that irks me more, where you just like get like, again, it's almost like you're just getting applause, like almost like at the whenever they do the State of the Union, they stand up and clap like every 10 seconds. It's
It drives
the
me nuts.
most annoying thing in the
Yes.
world, because you're
Yes.
just saying and extra recess for everybody, and then they all stand up. And so that's a lot what comedy is, where you're just like, again, like, are you a Simpsons back in the day? Bart becomes it's like a catchphrase called like, I didn't do it, and like he becomes like a 15 minutes of fame, like a star for a short time. And then everyone's just all of a sudden in the middle of class is turning to him and says, "Say the line, Bart." He's like, "I didn't do it." And then everyone goes crazy. That's what I feel at every award show whenever they say, "And also free Palestine," and everyone goes crazy. Or like I said, that's why I say another thing, you got to be careful about what your kids watch on YouTube, because these videos, they like throw in Jesus stuff, or they throw in at the end, and then they say, "Also, so subscribe to my page and also free Palestine." You're like
Yes.
they don't actually say that, but like that's
No, no, it's pretty unreal what's out there. Like it's you can't even keep up, to be honest. I wanted to ask you because I looked at some old clips, which I thought were hilarious, especially with the AA of meat lovers.
the J sketch stuff.
And I'm like, I want to know how would you have done that different today compared to then? I mean, I don't think you had to, because it was so funny. And then you see the joke about when people do Ash Wednesday, it reminds you of Pesach. I'm just like, how do you even beat those jokes? Like those ones, I feel like those are like perfect. Like
What's the half Wednesday one? I don't remember.
so basically, you said people one time a year they put like an ash on
Oh,
their.
Ash Wednesday, Ash Wednesday. Oh, yeah.
I apologize. So,
Well, one no, no, no. One thing is stand up, I think, and one thing was like a video, like J
yeah,
sketch.
yeah. But either way, I mean, how
Yeah.
would you do those different, or were you just like that joke is set? There's no way to add to it. I mean, do you ever work on like you look at your old stuff and be like, how can I do this differently, or how can I add to it?
Well, that's where my laziness comes in, where I really need to be better about some of these things where I'm like, or I have to change it up and be like, oh, that reference is too dated at this point, or it doesn't, even jokes about anti-Semitism or whatever aren't so funny anymore because it's too real. So in the last, 3 years is certainly, I used to say this joke where a guy said to me, like I was walking the street and a guy says to me, keep it moving, Yamaka, which I guess is the most neutral anti-Semitic comment. Like, what do? You too crucifix? But like, that's not as funny anymore because that's very real happening. So um, the joke like ages a little less well. But in terms of like that, like the sketch one you said about like the meataholics during the 9 days that we did like a J sketch of, which is a little separate than our stand up because that's like a collaboration where I do with Ami Kozak and Mikey Greenblatt, and sometimes I do videos with like Dovey Newberger and stuff.
I thought were really funny.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Yeah, yeah. No, we're really proud of those because what I would really like about I'll answer both questions, but
okay.
the J sketch thing, which is like our sketches that we've made over the last 3 years. We've made about like 25 different J sketches, and I got to give credit to Ami for doing the major bulk of like the editing and doing the editing of that, which is like a monstrous task that it's really amazing because the reason I think they work, I don't want to say it's really amazing. The reason they work is because we're really coming from a point of authenticity.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Jewish humor, there's a lot of, again, laziness and a lot of misinformation. And coming from like the people who like either back in the day, they would write for these shows, it would people that were like had more of a traditional or a Orthodox-ish background because they were affiliated with it. And we're getting more and more, you read Asadoros of like, the descent, unfortunately, away from religiosity for a lot of people. And so that's not there anymore. Meaning, for example, like this, I go back to The Simpsons, the episode where Jackie Mason plays Krusty's father, and we find out he's Jewish. There's a point where Bart and Lisa are like going to like the library to like, again, a library for those of your younger viewers is like Wikipedia, but a building.
Yeah, basically.
So they would go to the library and to like look up sources to like refute because he had always estranged from his son, and they were like literally quoting real stuff from like the Gemara and the Mishnah and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and like real stuff, and like somebody took the time to do that as opposed to now you look at a show like what's the show with Seth uh Seth, is it Seth Brody? Is that his name? Seth was his character on the OC. I keep getting Adam Brody and Kristen Bell. The Nobody Wants This.
Oh,
The show about
yeah,
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 where he's like a reform rabbi
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. And like, there's an episode where like he meets like Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen says your Tisha B'av thing was amazing, and he meant or Tu B'Shvat or something. He like got Tu B'Shvat and Tisha B'av
I think the
confused.
second season, right? Where
I
sorry,
it could be. It was the most recent one where
okay.
he's like this like dream job and whatever. And this guy says something about Tubi and Seth Rogen says something about Tubi Shvat and Tisha B'av. They like transpose them. I don't know if it was intentional, but and maybe it's very subtle joke that like, oh, this is so far removed from Judaism that they're confusing the two. But I don't think it was on purpose necessarily. And the fact that nobody called them out on it, and nobody in the writers' room is like, "Hey, can we get some like Orthodox person who knows this, or not Orthodox person even, or like conservative, or somebody who's more affiliated to like whatever." So like, I think there's a lot of lazy writing about Judaism that bugs me. That is like from because it's only from a certain um, let's call it Mamdani voter perspective,
I feel
you know.
like it's almost like some of these comedians that they think if they say every curse word, like people are gonna laugh. Like Jewish
But
jokes, like you make a Jewish comment, people are gonna laugh. Maybe I'm
But
wrong.
it's not even no, it's not even that. I think it's
Okay.
just that it's broad. I think it's broad Judaism that is like the people who yes, I grew up Orthodox and I'm Orthodox and like in that's my circle, and so I'm very limited in my worldview of who I know. But in terms of like the accuracy of Judaism and things like that, or Orthodox Judaism, I can tell you pretty well, what it is. And I think that's there's a lot of people who like claim to represent Judaism and they're missing the mark where it's like all about we are Jeopardy, the Jeopardy sketch that we did with, yeah, I don't know if you saw the Jewish Jeopardy sketch with me, Joey.
I have the Jeopardy jokes, so I'm gonna go back and see it.
Check it out, it's on my Instagram, you can see it. me, Dovey, we did Abi, Kozak, Mikey, Liz Glazer. So we did a whole like Jewish Jeopardy. And there's one character who's like, Rabbi Shelley and like multicolored tallis, and like every answer is tikkun olam. And it's that's become everyone. That's your entire. That's your synthesis of the Torah is Tikkun Olam. That's it. I'm like, okay, there's a lot more, and like it's not this like catch all type of thing. So back to Jay's sketch of like what we do here is we're like we're giving a really like I think fresh perspective of Orthodox Judaism, and we're not trying to hit everybody with this perspective, and we're not trying to hit everyone. We're not going for, hey, this is we're not gonna try to. If you don't get this joke, again, I'm so sorry for you, but I'm so sorry that you missed this joke. But like, we're not stopping. We're not gonna dumb things down so
Right.
that if you attend synagogue twice a year. We're not explaining Tzom Gedalia to you, something like that, and I think there's really merit for that because it's authentic,
Yeah.
and I think that there is a lot of when it comes to lazy writing for everything, but Jewish stuff I find the most because I'm close to it is that they're going for broad strokes. And the broader you go, the less accurate your material is going to be, and it's going to feel less authentic because you're trying to hit the tikkun olam people with me in the same joke, and that's not really gonna necessarily do it unless you're like, and even in the Jeopardy sketch you'll see like we're not just making fun of the Tikkun Olam like type for the sake of it. Like we're also making fun of like the closed-minded host who's like yeshivish, who's just like Rabbi Shelley, whatever. Like there's fun interplay where we're like kind of ripping on everybody again, the way like a Don Rickles would or a
Yeah.
South Park, where we're not ripping on everybody for the sake of ripping on everybody, but we're just like, okay, these are just jokes, and we do mean there is a little subtlety, but like this is what the Orthodox life is like. So like the 9 days, the people who don't have meat during the 9 days, the real like when I talk to other comedians and I say they're like going on about material and I say, what's your point here? What is your point? What are you trying to say here? That's like comes down to like, so what is a little bit of that. So for the 9 days thing of like, hey, there's a bunch of people who have to go to like an AA type of group because they're addicted to meat during the 9 days. What we're basically saying behind without saying it is that it's ridiculous that people who can't go a week without meat, even one of them is Shabbos, and you go to a siyum anyway. Like, let's slow down on the woe is me, I can't have meat for 9 days. In fact, let's have an over the top support group for people who can't do it. And that's but like really, somebody this year got mad at us, and it was like, hey, this is so, well, they got mad because they're like, how dare you make fun of addiction and like, you know, but again, this is where having subtle sense of humor and having an intelligent sense of humor versus not intelligent, we're not making fun of people with addictions. We are making fun of the fact that there's a,
That's what I'm saying. You get a pass as a comedian. This is what you should. It's like
it's
I
not,
spoke to someone and I'm like, someone got mad because they got picked on in the audience, and I feel like everyone wants to be that person because like the attention is on them. Like you go to a show, like, oh, pick me, like when they ask for a volunteer in the audience, it's like a magic show or something. Pick me, like you want to be picked.
yeah, but also if you're gonna get ripped on and whatever, like it may be embarrassing, and I understand not necessarily wanting
They
that,
don't
but
sit in the front row.
but okay, but I'm saying when you get a pass, saying you get a pass as a comedian is a very different type of thing. Like, I think if we're making jokes that are like not cool and like there's certain things to make fun of, and the other things that I think are not to make fun of, but they just won't be received well. And I don't think there is.
The line for everything. Yes, there is a limit.
No, but I'm saying it, but I think it's again, who's your direction? Who is your buddy, your joke? So like I'll make fun of like, and I think the world doesn't see this when on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and everybody like says there's a genocide going on and it's 200,000, 500,000 people have been killed, and like a lot of like pro-Israel people are quote unquote laughing about it, we're not laughing that like innocent people have died. We're laughing at the person promoting propaganda here.
Yeah.
I'm laughing at you for lying to people. And it's subtle. It's a subtle nuance because people don't get it, and people don't know, and they're like, "How dare you be so callous?" And you're like, "You're just." We're laughing at you as the recipient of this, the person delivering this joke or the hyperbole. That's the situation, and it's a subtle line, but I'm saying like, so I'll make jokes about Hamas terrorists and things like that, but I won't make jokes like about October 7th. I mean, stuff like that. Like that's like horrific. What happened? I mean, maybe like we had a J sketch that came out like a month after October 7th, and we didn't know how to do it. Where we're like, how do we address this whole situation going on without? We have to talk about it, or we have to, but like this is what everyone on everyone's mind. So we said, okay, let's make a sketch about every community like sending supplies to Israel and like stuff like that. All these schools were like sending stuff as much as they could, like sending deodorants and socks and all that stuff. So we just did a whole thing of like New Jersey moms, like where we're from, like and where we live, like right now, it's like sending, packing supplies and going over the top and just like thinking they're helping even if they're not necessarily helping, but like they're and it was a good acknowledgement of, hey, this is what's happening, this is the zeitgeist of the Orthodox and or the Jewish world, and but we're not gonna like make fun of like there's ways to make fun of like stuff going on, but
I
like not
understand that.
yeah yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up October 7th. Do you put a little more pressure on yourself because you know how therapeutic comedy is? At least for me, when I'm going through a tough time, we're like, October 7th, when I'm in front of a crowd, I want to make them laugh so bad because I know what everyone's going through. Or is it the same approach even before it?
You can't put that pressure on yourself. I think it's just a matter of like it's a matter of trusting your deep down instinct of whether or not this is what you're supposed to do. Like I don't have other skills, so I'm like, all right, no, I I kind of kid when I say that, but I mean like that I trust my inner sense of humor shaped by The Simpsons and Seinfeld. I trust that sensibility that what I come up with is probably going to be funny, or I have the hope that I can find something funny here, and if I can deliver it and work on it and whatever, yeah. But it's not okay if they bought a ticket type of thing. Yeah, you're bringing a show, but it's not like, hey, the Jewish world is going through a really tough time. I have to make sure I'm really good because of that. And that's not my responsibility. But I will say that, like, if you're a shul listening or whatever, we've had a few years of tough times. A comedy show is certainly in order as a palate cleanser to be like, hey guys, let's have this show. But yeah, I think it's certainly cathartic. People need it, and that's where I think me, Ami, Mikey, Dovi, um, our sense of humor is help because we're resonating with what people are really thinking of what's going on in their heads right now, of like, hey, I'm nervous about anti-Semitism, was 1 foot in Israel, ready to go to Israel, if like, which I love as an idea, like everybody has Israel as a backup plan because suddenly Israel's going to great at processing paperwork quickly, like you're just gonna like in a jam. Also, I hate America's government. I'm going to go to Israel where the government is amazing, um, which I think is a fair thing to make fun of. Um,
I agree.
but yeah, we're on whatever. Like we're all a lot of people in my circles and the people that will go to my shows are the type of people who are this is on your mind. And I think what you said, when we're talking about post October 7th, I think what people don't get or don't appreciate or don't know is that everybody after months, maybe a year or more after October 7th, everyone felt like they're Ukrainian, like in terms of the Ukraine-Russia war, where there was
Yeah.
like a little bit of time where everyone's like, yes, Ukraine, Ukraine. No one, everyone's forgotten about Ukraine by now, and there's a new news cycle going on. But everybody who's remotely connected to Israel, and it should be most Jews, if they really deep down know themselves, everybody feels like, hey, this is like these people were kidnapped for being Jewish. These people were killed for being Jewish. These people protecting um, Israel are doing it because people hate Jews. And you can dress it up as much as you want in anti-Zionism and made up stuff, but that's deep down what it is. And
And you brought up the serious side of it, so I wanted to ask you, Ellie, how do you get people to take you seriously? And I'm not saying you joke 24/7, but I'm sure you have friends just like ready for a laugh. Like, we don't want the serious side, or how do I know you're not joking or you are joking?
it's interesting because I think the best way to combat the anti-Semites you see is with jokes because you can't argue logic with them. You just won't. It's just not going to work. They just will never admit they're wrong. They're so focused on the preciousness. The same way, like social justice is a religion for people these days, or the notions of social justice. So you are shattering their sense of self right now. If you say, "Hey, you're supporting the bad guys, right?" Or you maybe are being misled into supporting a cause which is actually making the world more dangerous and letting more people be killed. But okay. But you're not gonna talk logic to them. So that the humor is actually the way to do that. In terms of seriousness, I mean, I'm on Twitter X a lot, in the trenches with the anti-Semites, and I think I just make valid points where I kind of just say like, hey, I said anti-Semitism is the world's CTE now. It's just like a lot of people have been bashed over the head too many times with stuff about Jews, and they're just like,
Yes.
well, this is affecting my brain right now. And but or just stuff like that is I think I have a pretty nuanced take on things where I'm not a big fan of Netanyahu as the third version of him as a prime minister, and I think it's time for someone else to be in charge, certainly. And that shouldn't be a controversial take from a pro-Israel person, uh, because I said Netanyahu is like a dad who's like lost on a road trip who doesn't want anyone else to drive, and he's just like, we pull over, man. You want your mom to drive? She's so liberal and can't see at night. And so I think like that shouldn't be a controversial take, but I'm saying like so I'm pretty nuanced, I think for the most part. But yes, in the world has gone so far off the deep end in wacko land, and forgive me for saying the PC from a PC standpoint, but like yeah, the world's gone nuts,
It
and
has.
there are no more adults in the room, and we're capitulating to college students who just found out about who found out about Israel, a month ago. I love when you see like just like people quote like it's like Indiana Jones and it shows like a map and it says like Palestine. Everyone's like, "See, this is in a movie that takes place in the 1920s." And you're like, by thinking that this is a big thing, you are showing your ignorance a lot more than you realize. That like, oh yeah, we know it was called Palestine. What we're what you're missing the point is that the word Palestine, it was changed by the Romans to Palestine back in the day when they kicked all the Jews out, or most of the Jews out. Um, that doesn't just because it's called Palestine doesn't mean that the people who say that they're Palestinian are connected to that land.
Yeah.
A lot of them are Jordanian, but that would be very un-PC to say. Um, so like whatever. So the point is that like, but sometimes like you give them like you just say facts a little bit of certain things. You just say matter of fact like this is the situation, and um, it's in high school I had a teacher and I like had a poster in an English class and it said like stand up for what you think is right even if you're standing alone. I mean that's Judaism 101 is no, I'm serious. Like, there's
No,
this
I
idea.
know.
There is, and maybe I went to too many like Kiruv talks back in the day, like in high school, where they're saying, the people that say, "Well, what do you mean all these world organizations which hate Jews or hate Israel say that it's a genocide or say this a thing and say this thing?" I'm like, let me ask you a question. Do you know how many people think that Islam's the right religion? Like, I don't know, probably 2 billion at this point, maybe 1.8 billion. How many people think that Christianity is the right religion? Again, 2 billion people or so.
Yeah.
So either way, 2 billion people are wrong. So you're telling me, like, how many people thought that the you know, the sun revolved around the earth. Like, I'm just saying, like
Oh, nice.
it's and again, it takes a little bit of a, and this is where I think, forgive me for saying, with the Jewish cup, where this is why, whatever Candace Owens or Dan Bilzerian think they know about the Talmud, this is what learning the Gemara is supposed to teach you.
Yeah.
Is that, like, think of every scenario and use your freaking logic and say, let me ask you a question. If you can say whatever you want about Israel, who Israel has, state of the art technology about, with cancer research and all this stuff, and saving the world in so many different kinds of ways. Not to mention actually saving people, like in Syria in their civil war. Shoot, I got a phone call. Is that gonna mess your thing up?
No, no, we're good.
Okay, fine. I got a phone call though. So, in addition to, like, people, I'm saying Israel actually helped people in Syria during their civil war, unlike the UN, which I think there's a little bit of a spite situation going on there. They're like, use your logic here. Use your logic and think for a second. Hey, if anti-Semitism has been around for thousands of years, isn't it possible? And if anti-Semitism has been around thousands of years, and you think that there's systemic racism or prejudice in the world, isn't it even possible that the people that hate only Israel are actually hating Jews? Is that possible? And then again, as anti-Semites would say, just asking questions, just asking questions.
Very
Like,
true.
but yeah, I think there's a sense, the what I think what scares me the most is that there's a level of, like, across the board descent into, intelligence across the board, where people are just not critically thinking, people are not reading, people are just not reading headlines, not they don't realize that the news reports they're getting are editorials. They're not you're not getting the news, you're getting an opinion.
It doesn't matter. People are going to listen to whatever they want to listen to, or they're going to go with this percentages, statistics. Or, at this point, that you can't say anything to anyone. There's no.
I don't think that's true, but I think you have to realize, again, online might not be as.
But they're one day believing one thing, then the next day they're believing something else. Whether even it's just like a commercial for this
It's
food's really good, even if it's not good. Like people.
it's pretty consistent. Their viewpoints often are pretty consistent in their. It's because everything is team sports. So it's on you're on team gay marriage, going green, women's rights, anti-Israel, or you're on the other team in their minds. They think it's two options. They're many different genders, but there's only two opinions about Israel.
I think people, they do change their mind, but they're afraid of admitting that they maybe made a mistake. That's one of the hardest.
Yeah.
No one wants to, whether it's who you voted for. Like, yeah, I still like that. You're never gonna like we talked about earlier. Like people, their self esteem could drop so quickly by admitting something. Like they're so
Well,
worried what people have to say about them when you're
well,
talking.
there- well, well. That's also what we've created with social
Yeah,
media a little bit. Is the everything's a Salem witch trial, because if you say the wrong thing on camera, you go viral and lose your
100%.
or get attacked and whatever. So, like, I'm sure there's plenty of celebrities who are pro-Israel in their mind, in their hearts,
That might mean less of a payday with the next movie. So they have to prevent
or
stuff.
getting a death threat, or
Yeah,
getting, who knows. Do you want what Seinfeld, one of the richest people richest people, is getting free Palestine at his shows.
yeah.
Thankfully, he has a security detail, but, like, do people really want to deal with that if that happens? Probably not.
Look, I've
So
had hate comments. I've had some pretty and I don't even know who I am. Like why me? So, I mean, I know I'm
they
Jewish.
they find they find they find. I mean, and that the secret. So that's the secret to combating this is humor is one, because, again, go every Tisha B'av I realize it, that I'm like, hey, nothing new we've seen. I posted on Tisha B'Av a very serious thing. I said, the 10 martyrs who were like the Asara Haruge Malchut, it's called, the 10 martyrs who were killed. You read it on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, and it's 10 martyrs, like rabbis who were killed by the Roman government, as a big display, like really brutally killed. And the kina and the way the text makes it like out to be like there were 10 rabbis like standing in a room at the same time, even though historically they lived at different times, and it's not possible if they weren't in the same generations for some of
Yeah,
them. But that's not the point. The point of it, in my opinion, in my view, is the point is here. The story starts with the reason the Roman, emperor or whatever decides to kill them is because he says, "Oh, what's the punishment for kidnapping?" And they're like, "Oh, death." And in Judaism, they say, "Okay, well, so your brothers, Yosef's brothers in Bereshit, kidnap Yosef and sell him. They should have been killed. So surely you're going to have to suffer for their fate." Which again, the reason I think it's relevant to today is because this is just a cockamamie excuse of like a fake trial of like, oh no, this is, like I say, every 75 years the world goes, this is a reason to hate Jews. This is a valid reason to hate Jews. So like, so the way to combat this narishkeit of the world is realize it is narishkeit, and narishkeit in the sense like it's nonsense that they're talking about these things, and that's not to say that Israel's off the hook completely. That's to say that the people, it's bad faith who you're hearing from. The people, Israel, I said, is Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, who says, "I am not the. I wish I was the monster you think I am." And then he says, I'm guilty. And they're like, "You're guilty of killing Joffrey?" He's like, "No, I'm guilty of being a dwarf." And he's like, you're not on trial for that." He's like, "I have been my entire life." So Jews and Israel are on trial. Israel's been on trial for 78 years. And it's never, and you can say whatever you want about human rights, whatever.
yeah,
It's very clear. Look at history, and again, nobody knows history anymore, so that's also part of it. That's also why the pendulum swinging the other way is because anybody who's like older than us or like parents' generation who knew about the 6 Day War and knows that if you pull back the lens, Israel's really the David and the Goliath story and not Goliath, despite what it seems like, because they'll zoom in on the West Bank or they'll zoom in on Sheikh Jarrah, like one block in the West Bank, to be like, oh, look what's whatever. So that's part of the marketing and the PR that the anti-Israel side is doing. But Israel, we've seen this before. This is very clear. This is what we've done where we the Israel's always, oh sorry, always, it's in the 1972 Olympics when they Black September Palestinian terrorists killed the Israeli athletes and the coaches.
yeah,
They continued the Olympics like a day later.
yeah. I know.
That
I
tells you all you that tells you all that tells you all
never,
you need that tells you all you need to know. What?
I never really thought of it like it, and it's so clear, but I never really stopped and thought about the way you just said it. It's pretty messed up.
It's so messed up. It's so messed up.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's actually surreal that you just said it like that.
And again, if you want a modern day example, imagine 250 people were taken from the US into Mexico or into Canada, held hostage, many of them killed, and we traded the equivalents of Charles Manson for those people to be
Yeah,
returned alive or their bodies.
yeah, you're right. Wow.
And that is, and you're like, and then people are saying, hey, maybe it's a little disproportionate what you're doing to, I mean, whether or not it's getting these people back was the main priority of the entire thing, I don't know. And whether or not there's a, hey, can you eradicate Hamas, or is it like a hungry
It
pop
sounds like we're
black.
gonna maybe have to be. I don't like this. Not the 6-7 thing, but you're gonna have to kind of put like 20% like serious and 80% comedy because your points are very valid. Like I'm not just saying that because you're on, but it's you're right.
Well, so sometimes I'll say modern day examples in my jokes of like stuff like that, like kind of touches on that stuff where I say, For example, like people say, like our generation was like, oh, you can't buy a German car, right? Because like, Chas v'shalom, like I would never buy a German car because of what like the BMW and Mercedes, like they were part of this Nazi regime and stuff like that. I said I understand that sentiment, but do you think they had that entire conversation throughout history with groups that hated us? Like like people were like, you're wearing a shirt made of Egyptian cotton on Pesach.
Yeah, yeah.
You're you're eating a Greek salad on
Oh,
Hanukkah.
God forbid.
You're using Roman numerals on Tisha B'Av. I can't look
They
at you.
got a whole bunch of
So yeah, I think there's a lot of wisdom in Judaism. There's a lot of wisdom and this like common sense in Judaism. And I think anyone who knows anything about Judaism and Israel deep down knows that Israel and Judaism are Judaism is I say that it's like the whole idea of the chosen people is a little bit of a mistranslation, I would say.
yeah,
It's more like selected. You were selected and chosen. Fine, chosen is whatever, but choice as in like chosen has this like elitism to it. I think it's more like selected, like you're the older brother. You're like the older brother for the rest of the world who's like, hey, you're the example and you're supposed to be this moral compass to everyone else. And that's not an easy job to be. You're not, I say, and remember who you are. And the way to combat this is, and back to like my point of like from a while ago, like the way to combat anti Semites and the idiots out there are being strong in who you are
yeah.
because they respect that. That's why people respect Chabad because Chabad it doesn't waver and waffle in who
Yeah,
they are.
you're
It's like in Hamilton, I say it's like Aaron Burr who does, and the character of Aaron Burr is just like this guy who's just like I would call him the modern day Brad Lander, who is this New York guy who just like is selling out whatever for the votes. So what does Aaron Burr stand for? I don't know. But Hamilton, he wasn't liked. You're not going to be liked if you have convictions, but you'll be respected. You'll have, so be true to who you are. Don't forget who you are.
totally agree. I totally agree.
And a lot of these Jewish people who are change your name, change your nose, sell out, condemn Israel all you want. You're still Jewish. They're still they don't care. They don't care which side you're on. Or, there was like a guy, a councilman walking through and everybody yelling at him and he's like anti-Israel. And everyone's yelling at him anyway for being Jewish, like for Israel stuff. Like, it doesn't matter. So and who is this that said it? I forgot. I think it's Phil Rosenthal, who's created Everybody Loves Raymond, tells a story. He says I got an idea from, or I got a note from like a former TV show like runner person who made a show, and he says something like, "Make the show you want because they're gonna cancel you anyway." So like that's my approach to that's my Judaism. That's not never. I mean, I have my own views and everything, but that's the thing. You can capitulate all you want.
This is who you are, no matter how much you like it or not. This is who you
Uh,
are.
yeah, and I mean, this is then you also go from from an Israel policy standpoint too. Like this is where, like when my rabbi of my shul told us about October 7th, we were in shul on Shmini Atzeret, Simchas Torah,
Yeah,
Shmini Atzeret in the morning, and he came in at like 8. It was like early minute and brag. But he came in and he told us what happened. I was reading the book from Joseph Tlishkin about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the section I was reading about was about Israel. And he said the Lubavitcher Rebbe was against giving up land in Israel, not because of the kedusha aretz, the holiness of the land, but because it doesn't make everyone safe. Because of pikuach nefesh, it makes people in danger because you are rewarding terrorism. You are rewarding. You are giving when your kid has a tantrum and says, "I want my iPad, I want my iPad," and then you give in, you're giving him the iPad. And then he's gonna say, "Hey, I just learned this behavior
I
to do
remember
this."
that was it was actually that was a roller coaster of a week for me because I just had the day after Yom Kippur, I had my house raided, I had everything taken, and then about a week later, I see my friend walking the store, and he's like, a bunch of people were just killed. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? So it was just it was an emotional roller coaster. That
It was very surreal day. I know for sure. And no, but I'm saying, but that is the idea that like
yeah,
if you give in and you waffle, and you and again, that's why you're seeing so many Jewish people who are, I don't want to say on the wrong side, but a little bit on the wrong side, like and I'm not saying it's so simplistic as a sides, this side versus this side. But if you're like completely condemning Israel, as opposed to like having a nuanced opinion and say, okay, not BB or whatever, BB's time to go because he was the baseball manager during the worst attack that ever happened to Israel. He should be fired at the minimum. That's a little bit my opinion on it. But like at the end of the day, that's why there are a lot of Jewish people who are just not staunch enough in their beliefs that they're just like, well,
But we all need to go through our different moments and times where we need to hopefully figure ourselves out. And it sounds like the worst. Like at the worst time we're living through. Like this is when you decide to not side with us, But at the same time, Hashem has a plan for everyone. Everyone makes decisions that hopefully make them stronger one day, and they wake up. Everyone needs a wake up call, no matter what you're going through.
I
We all
think
need to close our eyes and think about what we're doing on a daily basis. Every morning when wake up, we say Modani. We have to think about this is a new day. What are we going to do?
respectfully, I think there is no bigger wake up call than on October 7th.
I totally agree with you.
And wait, hold on. But also, there were people condemning Israel's response before they even went in.
You're right, and I'm
Yeah.
agreeing
Personal challenge.
how much October 7th is beyond terrible. But all I'm saying is that we all have, let me go backwards a little bit. I think October 7th was a wake up call for all of us as a Jewish united people. But we all go through our personal hardship that
Yes.
even that's not always a wake up call, but it's all about what you do with it. But we also have time, it's just like doing teshuva. You have time to figure it out. And I think even these comments people make, it could be, there could be more to it. They could be afraid. They could be confused. You never know what someone's going through. But I think most people, I would hope, and I could be wrong, that their comments doesn't always mean what they're thinking. They I guess I'm giving benefit of the doubt because I think all of us eventually are going to unite. I give benefit of the doubt of our own people. So sometimes I hear comments, I'm like, that's not really what you're thinking. That's just what you're saying. Because for whatever reason.
Well, I also think that anyone who's vehemently anti-Israel who's Jewish is because of their own personal trauma
Yeah,
of
exactly.
they had a Rebbe in sixth grade they didn't like, they went on a birthright trip and they were made fun of or whatever, and it's not necessary. Almost all cases in my I think are like that, of like you went through something and this is about you.
There's people that don't practice a thing of Judaism until they're 70 years old, and they say that's okay. We all figured it out at a different time, but it does hurt. It does hurt when you hear the comments. I'm not gonna lie, it does hurt me inside. It does get me angry, but I think we just need to, just like I have friends who are going through a tough time, and some people are just like, I'm not doing anything to help them, and there's people like they're still Jews, no matter
Right.
what they say or do.
I I think you gotta treat them like a Tinek Shenishba with like Judaism, where the same thing, like we're like, hey, you grew up in Randomsville, Alabama, you don't know much about Judaism, uh, and the same way you grew up hearing all this stuff about Israel that wasn't true. Maybe we could don't. It's the Ted Lasso of be curious, not judgmental.
I think we have to all be there for each other no matter what. And even if it's hard. And it's a test. It's a test. When we hear people saying things we don't like, it's a test to us personally. What are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I'm a little biased because I went through and think I had a lot of support, but I went through a very tough time where I could have had people judging me left and right without knowing the facts. And that's okay. I'd have to accept that. But I'm sure there would have been some people that are just like, you know what? He's still a Jew. He might have made a mistake. He might have not made a mistake. It doesn't matter. We're here for each other. But
Yeah.
you never know.
Right.
So I want to do a quick speed round, and I do appreciate all your input on that because, I'm always curious what people have to say.
Sure.
So thank you. I really do appreciate that. I want to end on a speed round. I like to have a little bit of fun, even though we had tons of fun already. So it's kind of like a bonus.
No problem.
Okay, Catskills or Miami?
I mean, I'm not from New York originally, so Catskills because I'm gonna get booked more. for shows, but Miami, I'm more of a go in the sun type of crowd.
All right, me too. Nice.
At
Funny.
this point, they're the same though.
Okay, cool. Funniest Jewish holiday. I didn't write all the questions.
Fun, probably Pesach.
And by the way,
Pesach.
for some reason I
Pesach has a lot. Pesach has a lot of material, a lot more material. There's a lot there that you could. There's ripe for jokes.
kind of saw that coming. Okay, tougher.
I mean, well, because other ones are just too serious. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur are too serious. Hanukkah, there isn't. I won't say there isn't a ton to it. Um, yeah, and the other ones are Sukkot and Shavuos are too.
There's so much you can do with Pesach.
Sukkot's too, but Pesach, yeah, Pesach's more universal for Jews.
um, tougher audience: a comedy club or your own family.
Probably own family, but my kids are little. But my wife's family is some people in the WhatsApp chat very just like, oh, joke was said, but sometimes they like it. I don't know, but it's a different sense of humor, different sense of sensibility.
Okay. Funniest place on earth: a kiddush, a Jewish wedding, or an airport gate to Israel.
Ooh, airport gate to Israel. There's a lot of like observing. You could do a lot of seeing a lot of what's happening here, and like, okay, 6 minyanim being happened and being made, and but Kiddush is good. Kiddush is really good for material. Also, you're there's a lot of watching kids go hand first into kugel
Oh
is
God.
is yeah. You're like, okay, we should probably still be wearing masks.
Okay. One comedian, live or dead, that you'd love to perform with.
mm, probably probably Seinfeld. I would say. I don't know, just because I feel like his audience would be my style, because I'm probably more of a observational comedian.
Okay, cool. Finish the sentence, and there's only two more. You know you're at a Jewish event when, and I love this question.
When the people are complaining about the food.
All right, that's that. Yep. Okay, finish this sentence. I know I've made it when.
Ooh. When I don't. Sorry, I got a phone call, a spam call again. I know I've made it when I. Sorry, I'm just thinking about this for a sec.
No, it's all good.
So much for speed round. Uh, I know I've made it.
That's the question I asked.
I know I've made it when I don't have to tell people who I am, and I'm not just like the guy who looks like everyone else at shul. I don't know.
That's pretty good after all that thinking. I like that. That's good.
Thank
That's a
you.
good answer. But Alex,
Thanks.
I want to thank you for being on Leaving Yosh because it really first of all gives me a lot of strength because as you know my voice was taken away for a good amount of years. So the physic that you give me, but also what you do for other people, it really is therapeutic. We need humor, especially nowadays. We need people to kind of put us in a space where we can just think about the good things and the things that make us laugh. So, and that's what Living Yosh is all about. It's about someone who's passionate what they do and people who make a difference for others. And you definitely do that. And
Thank you.
just keep doing what you're doing because we need it. We need it more than ever. And I hope you can come back again. Because
Yeah, thank you. One thing I may note at the intro, if you could, I don't know if we could, as a side thing, I don't know if we could talk offline, but thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I was, I'll tell you offline. But no, thank you. This is really fun to talk and schmooze. I love schmoozing. It's the way I do what I do, and I'm glad you reached out. And yeah, maybe we'll see you next time I'm in Miami.
all right. Please. Do you plan on coming out here soon?
I have to figure out. My shows are always like how how they come about. It's always tricky, but hopefully we'll make something happen. We'll see. I come out. I go a few times a year. I think to
Cool. Yeah, I would love that. That'd be awesome.
yeah.
All right, Ellie, thank you so much, and we'll speak when the camera's
Sounds good.
off.
Thanks a lot.